Okay, I want to make a second. What kind of video would you want to see me make? Now, in my first video, I talked about language. Well, first I said Brazil, but I actually meant the Philippines. Now, I know a couple of chicks that speak Tagalog. Now, I'm sure the official language of the Philippines is Spanish, because the Philippines started out as a Spanish colony. Well, like Brazil was a colony of Portugal, so they all speak Portuguese down there in Brazil. But back to Tagalog. Now, Tagalog, I've heard it. I've heard a couple of people speak it. Now, it's supposed to have Spanish in it, but when I've heard it, I can't really pick up any Spanish words. If some chick wants to do a video on Tagalog with me, you have to teach me a few words. Now, if there are Spanish words, I would probably already know them. But if they're Tagalog is supposed to be like a mixture of some Asian languages, maybe is it Malay? Malay is like the language of Indonesia or Malaysia, somewhere like that. Now, I'm not an expert on that. I'm just saying that Tagalog, because Philippines have been settled by people from a lot of different places. They pick up their language and cultures and stuff. Just like here in the United States, we call ourselves a cultural melting pot, because we do have cultures from primarily Western European, but we do get a lot of Hispanic culture, and there's other from different parts of the U.S. There's people that have settled here from other parts of the world and have added a unique culture to that part of that world. I'm thinking like Chinatown and San Francisco and places like that, or here in the Four Corners area where we get Native American first citizens culture, the Apaches and Navajos and stuff, where they have their unique culture. I'm thinking that makes the world more interesting. Now, if another thing I might do, if some chick has an automotive project, maybe she's got a vehicle here she's buying that doesn't run and wants somebody to help her wrench on it to get it going, needs somebody to drive it cross country, back to her home somewhere, maybe eastern U.S. or maybe on the West Coast or something. If some chick needs some guy to wrench on something with her and then drive it, as long as I get a bus ticket or maybe an Amtrak ticket or a plane ride back here to the, my home, I'd go for that. Or if she wants to join up with me permanently, we'd certainly want to talk and make sure we're two compatible human beings. Like if she wanted somebody to, join up with her on that Route 66 thing, drive across country, we would want to know that we were two human beings that were compatible. We'd want to do a few things around here, 1 or 2 day things, within 100 miles of the valley. Maybe go down and do that Pima Air and Space Museum down there in Tucson. Go down there and then spend an overnighter, the Picacho Peak down south of Tucson, and then come back. Or maybe go out and spend a day or two out at Saddle Mountain. It's out at Tonopah area. Maybe go down, go do the Vulture Mines in Wickenburg, or drive up and down Yarnell Hill. Something that take 2 or 3 days, and then we figure out if we're two people that weren't miserable with each other or weren't going to try to kill each other, something like that. And then we would want to do the, more long-term thing. That's what I would want to do. Make sure that we were two people that could work together. Just putting that out there. Okay. Das Leben ist ein Abenteuer. C'est la vie and Leben Sie wohl. Auf Wiedersehen. Sayonara. Wait a minute. Let me get to that Japanese soldier we're going to talk about in the Philippines. Now, this was not a fairly famous story, but it's out there. Now, there was, at the end of World War II, with a handful of, this is the Philippines. Philippines, a bunch of little islands out there. This guy was holed up into the early 70s. His fellow soldiers had, tried to, get on a PA speaker trying to tell them in Japanese the war is over. But Japan signed a peace treaty. Actually, Japan, back in the 70s, Japan was doing pretty well. They was trying to tell him that he, finally, they made a deal. They got one of his, his direct commanding officer was still alive. He said, "Look, we made a deal with, that current governor of, the president of the Philippines. We've an official surrender, where you're absolved of any, crimes that you have committed after World War." Because he could have been tried for stuff. I think he actually killed a few people. After the war, he had stolen a bunch of stuff. But he could have been tried for that. But they had had him sign an official surrender absolving him of any potential crimes where he wouldn't be tried for them. And he actually went to Japan. I think he probably died back in the 90s somewhere. But to me, I find kind of a very interesting story that there were a handful of guys like this that they didn't surrender for some. They just were so good at self-survival. They were actually able to fend for themselves for like 20 some years after the war was over. So I find it kind of interesting. Anyway, like I said again, sayonara, auf Wiedersehen, ciao, au revoir. Oh, there's 2 or 3 that I'm forgetting besides goodbye. Okay, love y'all. Let's keep life interesting. Bye-bye.